All right. How did you get started in the whole institution of popular culture? It now has become an institution, but how did it start?
Well, it really started because of my husband. He was not very happy with the American Studies Association, so at an American Studies Association meeting in about 1969, something or other, he and a group of people got together and decided that they would like to form a popular culture association. And they did. It was that simple. The next year we had a meeting in, I think, East Lansing. And at that time, I was working for the Bowling Green University Popular Press, for which I still work. And Ray was director of the press as well as big chair of the popular culture department. So there was a little nepotism there. He was director of the press. He is the director of the press. And I am the managing editor, the business manager, whatever. So I think that my real involvement with the association became because Ray is not very good with details. He sees the overall picture, and he is very bad about little details. So I began working with him in getting the programs together because I have a phenomenal memory for names, dates, places, where you're from, your mother's name, all of these kind of things. And I could remember this and was therefore able to do a lot of the sort of nitty-gritty work of putting the program together. So it wasn't anything I ever planned to do. I did it, as I said, almost by default, because Ray was not very good at doing the kind of thing that I do reasonably well. So
it must have been an exciting period, and you watched it grow into a phenomenon with that institution.
It has been exciting. We, at our first meeting, I think had about 200 people, most of them friends of ours that we had begged and pleaded to come. And now this time we have about 2,000 people at this meeting. So we have, in 20 years, grown from 200 to 2,000. And this has been exciting. It was very difficult along the way because when you say popular culture, so many times people say comic books. And people were always surprised to come into our home and find that we listened to classical music and that we didn't have tons of comic books, stacked around the floor. This was the perception of popular culture for many years, maybe still is in some ways. So there's been a lot of knocks along the way, and it hasn't always been, really happy. But then you get to know the people, and that's been really a lot of fun for me.
Can you also talk a bit about some of the resistance, especially the academic resistance that he's getting?
Ray could speak more to that than I can because he's got more of the barbs than I have. In my office at Bowling Green, we're in what used to be the president's home, and it's slightly off campus. So I never go across to the campus. It's almost as though I don't belong to the university. And that way I'm protected from a lot of these things, whereas he has to go across the street and teach and go to Senate faculty meetings and all of this kind of things where people could get at him. And me, I just walk to work and I go in and I do my thing and I go home. So in a way, he has gotten much more heat than I have. Though in what we published, people used to laugh at the popular press, but now I think we've become quite respectable. We do some interesting books, and when I take them out and exhibit them, I don't feel that I have to apologize for the subject matter.
This is more related to, did you ever know that he was going to get this big, and when you sort of get a sense that he's going someplace?
Well, Ray is an optimist, and I am a pessimist. So when we started this, he said, we'll have thousands of people attending this. And I said, no, it'll die in 2 or 3 years. So every year it's this thing, he will say, oh, we're going to have 2,000 people. And I'll say, no, we'll be lucky if we get 800 this year. So, I have never in a way believed that we would get this big, because being a born pessimist, I just knew that we couldn't be. But then, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, in all of the news magazines, the newspapers, radio, television, everybody is saying popular culture, and they're not sneering when they say it. And I thought, well, maybe we may be on to something here. I'm not sure where I see it going. We may, and I say this every year, we may have reached our potential. Maybe 2,000 is where we're going to stop. Ray, of course, will tell you that in San Antonio next year we're going to have 2,500 people. So I guess I would say that I never really thought that it would get as large as it is.
One of the interesting characteristics of a conference like this is it's a class. You find everything.
Yes.
Not only different topics, but also different perspectives and who have the ability to keep it as open and as broad and as freewheeling like that? Or was this really something that happened? Or was it No. And we just finished a meeting on something related to this very subject. He and I agree on this. And Russ and I, who was one of the founding members of it, also agreed. John Coelty, Marshall Fishwick, these were early people. We felt and still feel that there is a place for almost anything on the program, that this is a place that people who are interested in things that they can't go to their own disciplines meeting and talk about, they can come here and talk about it. And even at this meeting, we've had a couple of meetings of the board and the area chairs, and some of them want to limit it. They want to eliminate certain areas. They say, why do you have aging in popular culture? Why do you have 5 sessions on aging? And I say, because it's very important in the culture. We're all going to get there if we live that long, and we should have these things. So I'm very passionate about keeping it a really open conference. Ray is the one who really goes out and actively recruits. I don't, but he can meet people on the street, and in 5 minutes he's invited them to give a paper at the next conference. So he's the one who is aggressive about it. I just fight to keep the things on the poster, and in the business meetings, I say we're not an elitist group. Let's stop that. If you want to go to MLA, go to MLA. If you want to have fun and do something interesting, come with us.
A small group of unhappy people unhappy, dissatisfied with the curriculum in the humanities in the 60s, when of course everything was in ferment, and most academics were sort of lagging behind students. But half a dozen of us felt that there are lots of things that are not being covered in the humanities that ought to be. So I got together with a man at the University of Chicago by the name of John Coelty. I had worked for years with a man at Michigan State University named Russell Nye. I'd worked with a man in Pennsylvania, Marshall Fishwick, and I got to know soon several other persons such as M. Thomas Inge, who is now down in the Randolph-Macon in Virginia, another person named Roger Rollin down in Clemson, and interestingly, a brand new PhD student from Harvard in American civilization named Peter Rollins, who came to us as a graduate student, has stayed with us ever since and is now Regents Professor of English at Oklahoma State. So a cadre of a dozen or so really aggressive, theorizing academics, although not really awfully big or caught up in theory. We had ideals, and I guess we had dreams, really, and we have been working on those dreams ever since. I think all those people still try to dream and think that we may have been partially successful so far, but we've only scratched the surface.
In terms of what were you thinking of studying? I mean, all of you had different specialties.
Yes, but we all had something in common, and that was a realization that there is a lot of stuff in the world, in culture, that the average academic despises or knows nothing about, or despises because he knows nothing about it. And we were awfully fed up with academics who tend never to get beyond their training. Those academics who say, I was trained at Chicago in such and such, or I was trained at Harvard in such and such. Our feeling was that if you're any good, having been trained at Harvard in such and such, as soon as you can, you throw that away and become your own person. So we had in common a dissatisfaction and the realization that culture, and especially American culture as we saw it, is depriving students. We're not being fair to the students because we are excluding them from so much of the richness of life.
The other thing is that, for example, Browne is doing the early work on formula fiction.
Yeah.
Did Browne chat from there? You sort of started out on things that academics perhaps did do but were ashamed to admit that they were doing. And
how true. I can give you two examples. There was a professor of English at Michigan State who had been working for years in this field, and his papers had been lying in his desk drawer. When I established the Journal of Popular Culture, he went down the hall and said to Russell Nye, "Bravo, finally a place I can publish." And this is characteristic. Same thing at the University of Chicago, elsewhere. A lot of them didn't. Nobody, for example, except the student from Harvard, said bravo. But a lot of the non-elite schools, and they're the ones where we flourished most earliest, because you see, these people were those who were never quite admitted into the legitimate elite academy. Harvard still despised Bowling Green, and so in many ways, it's a kind of revenge. You know, it's the dog going by the fire plug, and finally saying, "Here's something I can give you."
In the growth of the study of popular culture, the journal, I think, is central. Can you talk about its role?
Yeah, we've always had a strange position in academia, and especially at Bowling Green State University, because they've never known quite what to do with me, and I've never allowed them to grab hold of me. When I went over there, I went to the president and said, "I want $4,000 to establish a Journal of Popular Culture." And being a wise man, he says, "No problem. Here's $4,000." I hadn't the vaguest notion what a Journal of Popular Culture is. I hadn't a paper or anybody that I knew who could write one. But I started it, and since there is nothing like it, it has grown into the publication. It still occupies a rather strange position, although I founded and am Secretary-Treasurer of the Popular Culture Association, and although the Popular Culture Association thinks it's their magazine, it isn't. It's mine. And so when they talk about our magazine, I never correct them, but it's not our magazine, it's my magazine. So it is the one which has been the leader all along, and I assume is now, and I hope will always be, the premier area of publication in the study of popular culture, although I have encouraged others other magazines, and there are something like 4 or 5 that are flourishing now in one way or another, with less, I presume, less success. Now, you would be interested to know that 10 years ago, one cold February morning, I said to myself, what does the world need? And concluded the world needs a journal of American culture, which will differ a little bit. And so that February morning, I established that. But you see, that's the marvel of the position I've held. I didn't have to ask anybody at the university or tell anybody at the university or ask for any money. When we run out of money, my wife and I have taken it out of the bank. So we have sailed our own ship, and that is awfully comfortable.
The other thing that I want to comment on is on the eclecticism of a conference like this, and the openness, which everybody marvels at.
And it's not easy to maintain. I happen to have the feeling that everything in a culture is of some significance. Some of it very transitory, some everlasting. But everything deserves its moment or its extended study. So anything that is suggested or I can think of, I want to introduce. Sometimes it's a one-shot thing. For example, I've tried for years to maintain a steady series of papers on wall covering, wallpaper, painting, pictures, and these kinds of things, and I've had the greatest difficulty. It seems to be a topic that most people are not interested in, but I try to introduce everything possible, and in so doing, of course, we maintain a chaos which is very disconcerting to some people. They ask, where are you going, and how do you ever expect to get there when you've got 1,800 people milling around in a pasture? And the answer is that we don't really, the milling around and the dust stirred up is its own excuse for being. Other organizations such as this develop along themes and areas and such things as that. Maybe their immediate cut is a little deeper than ours, but ultimately I think the sole purpose is not as long-lasting as ours.
There's so many different perspectives, theoretical perspectives that this conference contains, and I could see difficulties of one, for example, the interview people say, well, we don't really appreciate the Browne approach because they tend to have a celebratory approach to popular culture and not a critical approach as we do. Nonetheless, we do appreciate the fact that there's a place for us to come to. There's that sense of it. At the same time, we right now, in the past 6 or 7 years, there's been the growth of the cultural studies department, States and Communications department, and BPCL have grown. Do you see them as potentially sort of taking away some of the thought?
No, because I don't see any exclusivity or any parochialism. There's no territory involved whatsoever, at least as I see it. And so when somebody in communication or philosophy or law or religion, things like that, say we want to join you, and somebody may punch me and say, if you let them in, they'll steal your show. That's okay. I wouldn't mind at all, I think, maybe, if they stole my car, if they moved it in the right direction. I would be hurt, because I would like always to be the leader. I'd like to be the lead car, but I realize that is not that's not safe. And if one is really concerned, as I hope I am, in the subject rather than the personal advancement, then if you steal my car, it's okay.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the early difficulties of popular culture, the study of popular culture?
I'll give you 2 bits. My personal difficulty. When I started this, I had a fair reputation in American literature, folklore, and American studies. So, although they, you'll pardon the figure of speech, although they nipped at my heels, they couldn't bring me down. So they nipped a great deal. Since then, I've published altogether about 40 books. And so I have bled a great deal. I don't bleed anymore. Personally, I've been severely criticized. Professionally, about the same parallel. The persons who were with us, the leaders in the early days, were people of some stature. And although you might say it's too bad Coelty is wasting his life, you couldn't say that Coelty is a nobody. They had established their credentials, and that may in fact be the secret. If 6 or 8 persons with very weak credentials had started out, I suspect they would have been mowed down. But it's interesting that in the first 10 years of our existence, we frequently, when we would meet, say, "Shall we change the name from popular culture to folk culture, communication culture," something like that. And for some reason, pig-headedness or otherwise, we were slow to think about it. Finally, we got serious about it and discovered that why change now? It's been legitimized. And in the last 7 or 8 years, the degree of acceptance is overwhelming. When Eric Sevareid retired from CBS, in his concluding remarks, he told the world, "The popular culture of America is safe." And I had never heard it on television before. So I thought when Eric Sevareid announces it as safe, that we had arrived, and we have. And in the last few years, the momentum is almost frightening. And you see this in politics, the Berlin Wall, in Tiananmen Square, and elsewhere. It is now as secure as daylight.
The next question is, what are some of the factors that have allowed for this increase in growth?
The most marvelous thing of all, an outbreak of democracy. And that is what we have been counting on all along. We have realized that the popular culture of a country may in fact be the guardian of a democracy, since it is constantly testing, at least in the United States, the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And as long as you have a strong and vigorous popular culture, you have a safe and secure democracy, the Constitution. And so, as we now think that since democracy has broken out around the world, and has even may have taken on a stronger vitality in the United States, then it is even more worthy of being studied and understood now. And I suspect that's a thing that really is always now haunting me a great deal, and that is, can a democracy survive its popular culture? And do I know the answer? No, I don't know.
But a democracy always is celebrated in sense.
At times wallowing in it, and in the real question, can it survive it?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure that we need to know. It's a question we surely need to examine.
And we know that a lot of what people do when they look at popular culture is to look at the ideological messages, look at the prejudices sometimes that are being put out there, and in a sense, it's not simply embracing and enjoying. It's also there's a critical look at that's spade work, looking at ideology.
Yeah. That's a misunderstanding. Academics are, in many ways, tend to oversimplify, I guess, as all people do. And when they find me studying bestsellers, they say, all you're doing is reading bestsellers as mere entertainment. I would answer, there's no such thing as mere entertainment in the first place. And in the second place, I'm not here to celebrate them. I'm here to understand them, because they are a product of a culture of which I'm a member, and I need to understand that. So when you study when you study T.S. Eliot or Shakespeare, and become the world's best authority on Hamlet, if that's all you're interested in, then you may in fact be blowing a great opportunity. First, somebody once said that he had read Hamlet 98 times, and some wise, impudent fellow said, "Don't you ever read anything else?" You see, the answer, don't you ever think of anything else? If not, I don't want my kids to take you, because there's more to the world than... one thing that I would like to say, and that is, I've known academics for a long time. Some are strong, some are weak. But since we educate our children, the citizens of tomorrow, then anything we can do to improve the education of the educators is beneficial. And so we have urged my colleagues and others, go do papers. Even if you do them badly, you will grow a little in the process. You'll come back and be a more effective teacher. So it's a kind of a sprinkling of water on the grass and hoping it will grow better and feed the livestock a little better.
Just to give you a little bit of community content, in Canada, and particularly in Ontario, a study of popular culture is now institutionalized in the high schools, where the high school students have to take at least one course of what's called media literacy. And is there any such movement, or is there any kind of impulse in the United States to do the same kind of thing? Or is it...
I've been told, and this terrifies me, and I must do something about it. I have been told that the United States is last throughout the developed world in media literacy, despite the fact that we have more media than anybody else in the world. And I think that's dangerous. I think it's dangerous for the media, for literacy, and I think it's dangerous for the citizenry. And right now I'm writing a book on dimensions of literacy, in which I'm going to try to demonstrate that one must be literate in icons and rituals and television and architecture, and every medium of communication has its own vocabulary and literacy, which we need to understand. Is that going to be acceptable straight away? Probably not.
It's also ironic that it produces the most
It's terribly ironic. Which then you see raises another, I think, a rather fearful specter. And isn't it that we know so little about it because the teachers have taught don't understand the vocabularies to teach this? So yes, it's very dangerous, and I find that fact frightening and must be corrected.
And it's also very interesting too, just in terms of that someone out there in the community, you're the ones that were interested in doing this kind of stuff 20 years ago. Yeah.
Well, it's when one really, I think, enjoys his profession and is curious about it, then it just seems to me the logical thing is tear it apart, look at it, see what makes it run, and then see how you can develop the various things. And that's what we were trying to do.